The storm outside had already swallowed the city in darkness when Adrian Hale, the famously cold CEO of Hale Enterprises, found himself standing alone in a glittering ballroom filled with hundreds of people. Cameras flashed, music swelled, and elegant couples laughed under crystal chandeliers, yet he felt utterly invisible. For years he had mastered the art of pretending he didn't need anyone, wearing loneliness like a shield after losing the only woman who had ever loved him without conditions, his mother. But tonight, as his company celebrated its 25th anniversary, and reporters lingered like hawks, whispering that the nation's youngest CEO was too heartless to keep a partner, he felt a crack appear in the ice surrounding his heart. That was when he saw her, standing outside the ballroom near the staff corridor, soft-eyed, tired, hopeless, and holding a resume folder pressed to her chest. She was clearly not a guest, not dressed for this world, and yet something about her presence pulled him in with the force of gravity itself. Her name was Liana, and in a moment of overwhelming impulse, driven by desperation, longing, and some inexplicable instinct, he approached her with a request. No stranger should ever hear, "Can you pretend to be my date for one day? If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected beauty of fate, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more people discover these heart-touching stories." Liana had come to the hotel that evening simply to ask about job openings. A month ago, her father had suffered a stroke, and she had quit her small cafe job to care for him. They were drowning under hospital bills, and desperation had pushed her to try anything. Even walking into a five-star hotel she knew would likely turn her away the moment they saw her worn shoes and rain-dampened sweater. She had never expected anyone to notice her, much less the CEO whose face appeared on business magazines across the... When Adrian asked for her help, she thought he was joking. She had never blended into wealth. She was all rough edges and real struggles, not the polished elegance his world demanded. Yet there was something vulnerable in his eyes, something that made it impossible for her to say no. And just like that, two strangers stepped into a night that would rewrite both of their lives. The transformation happened quickly. A hotel staff member hurriedly provided a simple but elegant black dress for Liana, and as she stepped out of the changing room, Adrian found himself staring longer than he intended. Not because she looked glamorous, it wasn't that. She looked real, raw, human. Her nervousness, her humility, her whispered apology that she wasn't used to high heels, they stripped away the cold mask he had worn for years. He offered her his arm, and when she hesitantly slipped her hand into his, he felt warmth travel through him in a way he hadn't felt since childhood. Inside the ballroom, rumors erupted like wildfire. The untouchable CEO had brought a date. People stared, puzzled at how mismatched they looked. Adrian in a tailored navy suit worth more than Liana's rent for a year, and Liana trying not to trip on her borrowed shoes. She didn't play the part of an elegant partner, she simply existed as herself. And strangely, the authenticity made her glow more than any jewel in the room. As the night progressed, she noticed the exhaustion in Adrian's posture, the weight he carried behind every polite smile, the way he tensed when reporters asked about his personal life, the way he tightened his grip on her hand as if seeking something he didn't dare admit. She realized then that beneath his intimidating presence, he was simply a man who had been alone for too long. And for the first time, someone was seeing him, not the CEO, not the billionaire, but Adrian, the boy who had grown up lonely and hardened by expectations. After the event, he didn't want the night to end. Something about Liana made breathing easier, thinking clearer, feeling possible again. He offered her a ride home, but she declined, saying she didn't want to inconvenience him, so he walked her to the bus stop instead, without security, without an umbrella, without caring what the world might think. They stood under a streetlight flickering in the rain, and though little was spoken, a fragile connection formed like a small flame in a storm. When her bus arrived, she thanked him for treating her with more kindness than she had received in months, and the moment she disappeared into the night, he realized how painfully empty the world would feel without her in it. The next morning, Adrian couldn't stop thinking about her. Her quiet strength, the sadness she hid, the softness she carried despite life being so unkind to her. He found himself searching for her resume among the hotel's discarded applications and learning that she lived in a worn-out apartment on the outskirts of the city. Against every piece of advice his board members might give, he went to find her. Liana was shocked when she saw him standing outside her building, holding a small box of groceries and looking out of place among the peeling paint and rusted balconies. She told him he shouldn't be there, but he simply said he wanted to check on her father and make sure she was okay. She had never met someone of his status who saw her as more than a burden. She invited him inside, apologizing for the clutter, the smell of medicines, and the damp walls. But Adrian didn't flinch. He knelt beside her father, asked if he needed anything, and listened to Liana explain how she had been juggling hospital visits and part-time jobs. The sincerity in his concern tightened something inside her chest. She had always been the caretaker, the one who never asked for help. Yet here was a man who had everything, offering support without expecting anything in return. In the days that followed, he visited her often, sometimes just to bring groceries, sometimes to check on her father's progress, sometimes because he simply wanted to see her. The more time he spent in her small apartment, the more warmth he felt, warmth he had never found in penthouses or boardrooms. But with every step closer, he also fought a growing fear. Adrian had been betrayed before by people drawn to his status, and part of him wondered if Liana would eventually do the same. He struggled with trust, with vulnerability, with opening doors he had kept locked for years. Meanwhile, Liana battled her own storms. Though she felt something undeniable growing between them, she feared that his world would eventually crush her. She had no money, no stability, nothing to offer a wealthy CEO. She worried that he was simply fascinated by someone from a different life, an interest that would fade once the novelty disappeared. So she kept her feelings silent, convincing herself that what they had was temporary, a fragile dream destined to end. Everything changed the night her father's condition suddenly worsened. Adrian rushed her to the hospital in his car, staying by her side as doctors worked to stabilize the old man. When the medical bills piled up once again, Liana broke down for the first time in front of him, apologizing for being a burden, for letting him see her world fall apart. Adrian took her hands, telling her that she didn't have to face everything alone anymore. In that moment, their emotional walls, years in the making, finally cracked. Over the next month, their bond deepened in ways neither had expected. Adrian found refuge in Liana's sincerity, and Liana found strength in his unwavering presence. They shared quiet nights watching old movies on her small TV, afternoons caring for her father, mornings filled with soft, hopeful glances. Adrian laughed more in those 4 weeks than he had in a decade. Liana learned to trust someone again after years of disappointment. Both of them began to imagine futures they once believed impossible. But love always gets tested. One morning, the tabloids exploded with photographs of Liana leaving Adrian's penthouse after he had brought her there to rest following another long hospital night. Reporters labeled her a gold digger. Social media tore her apart, and Adrian, under pressure from investors and his board, was warned that his association with her could hurt the company. Liana, terrified of ruining his career and reputation, made the most painful decision of her life. She walked away. She left him a letter, trembling handwriting, tear-stained paper, telling him he deserved someone who could stand beside him without dragging him down, someone who belonged in his world, someone who wasn't her. She begged him not to look for her. Heartbroken, Adrian spent weeks searching anyway. He couldn't breathe knowing she was gone. His days blurred into nights, his work suffered, and the emptiness he once lived with now felt unbearable because he had tasted what real connection felt like, what home felt like, and he refused to lose it. He finally found her at a small community center cafe where she had taken a job washing dishes to stay afloat. She looked thinner, quieter, dimmer than the woman he had fallen for. The moment she saw him, tears filled her eyes, and all the walls she had built crumbled instantly. Adrian told her that he didn't need the world's approval. He only needed her. He vowed to protect her, stand beside her, and fight for a love that had saved him long before she even realized it. They embraced in the small kitchen, surrounded by clattering plates and steaming coffee machines, their hearts finally beating in sync. Adrian offered her not luxury, not money, but devotion, something she had never received so deeply, and Liana, for the first time in her life, allowed herself to be loved without fear. Together, they rebuilt everything they'd lost. Her father recovered slowly, Adrian learned to let others into his heart again, and Liana found confidence in the love that had once terrified her. They didn't rush anything. Their love grew patiently, gently, rooted in shared pain, mutual respect, and the profound realization that the best things in life often arrive unexpectedly. Months later, standing under the same flickering streetlight where their story began, Adrian held her hands and confessed that the night he asked her to be his pretend date was the night he unknowingly asked her to save him, and she had, without even trying. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more inspiring stories for you. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe love can come from the most unexpected moments? If you'd like, I can also create a thumbnail concept, title variations, or YouTube description to go along with this story.